Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our final session on this first day of the iFX EXPO. I'm Rachel McIntosh. It's been great to hang out with you guys today, and I'm looking forward to the night party tonight and waking up early to come back here in the morning. So this panel, I'm very excited for. It's called Data Leverage Licensing, a Global Registry Outlook. So as you know, regulation and compliance remain key for any market participant in this industry. So we've gathered this group of experts here today to give us their insight on the future of this space. I'm going to briefly introduce all of them. Our moderator is Ron Finberg, Director at Global Regulatory Reporting Solutions at IHS Markit. We also have Demetris Tsingis, the Managing Partner at FINCAP Advisors. Remonda Kirketerp-Møller, Founder and CEO of Muinmus Apps. Evdokia Pitsillidou. Did I almost do it? Thank you. Okay. The Risk and Compliance Director and Partner at SALVUS Funds. Xenia Neophytou, Managing Director at Financia. And Angelos Paphitis, Managing Partner at AGP Law Firm. Let's give them a warm welcome to the stage. Thank you, everyone.
Rachel, thank you so much for that, and everybody for getting here. So it's 5:10, and they saved the best for last. So we're really excited to have everybody here for the most, probably the best panel of the day. As Rachel mentioned, my name is Ron Finberg from IHS Markit. Before we start today, I'm going to give everybody a moment to kind of introduce themselves, tell themselves a little bit about what they're doing. So, Angelos, even though you wanted Demetris to go first, you ended out over there, so you go. Take it away.
Well, hello everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Angelos Paphitis. As very correctly mentioned, I'm the managing partner of AGP Law Firm, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Xenia.
Hello everyone, and it's a great pleasure to be here to a live event again. And thank you so much for the organizers for giving me this opportunity to talk to this event. My name is Xenia Neophytou. Yes, I'm the Managing Director of Financia. We specialize in licensing for investment firms, compliance support, internal audit, and all that is required for financial regulation. So I'm happy to be here today and for the interaction that will follow in a while. Thank you.
I'm Remonda Kirketerp-Møller, the founder and CEO of Muinmus APS in Denmark. I've been in financial services now for over 20 years, and one of the core, if you like, headaches we've all experienced in the past many years and will continue to, is putting together the entire regulatory framework to actually allow a client to be onboarded by any financial institution in any part of the world. And that's something we've spent the past good 10 years on now, actually in Muinmus, to digitize the entire process and connect it to global sources to ease the pain for financial institutions and enable them to comply. And thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to be here today.
Hi everyone, good evening. My name is Demetris. I am dealing with finance and regulation the last 20 years. And it's a pleasure to have picked this industry actually, because if nothing changes, there's nothing a consultant can do. But in finance and regulation, everything changes. And it's a delight finally to be face to face with all of you and have the pleasure to be speaking here today. I hope that we manage to have a discussion about how the regulation will move on, and I'm delighted to be honored to be in this panel of fellow colleagues in the industry that are in the forefront of the regulation in Cyprus and globally here. So delighted and looking forward to our conversation.
Hello everyone. My name is Evdokia Pitsillidou. I'm a partner at SALVUS Funds. I'm the Risk and Compliance Director of the firm, and as the others colleagues said here, we're all dealing with regulatory matters, licensing, internal audits, and anything related to how this industry is evolving. I'm happy to be here today and looking forward for giving more insights of current situation of the market and what we're looking forward. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all. Okay, so one of the exciting parts about today is that we're facing people again. I've done numerous, countless webinars and Zoom types of meeting over the past 20 months or so. And it's great to be back at the iFX EXPO in Cyprus. So I guess just to start things up, it's been a while since I've been here, and I haven't really been on the ground to really know what's going on. So what's currently what's the demand? Let's start with you, Demetris. In terms of where Cyprus is right now in terms of demand in this post-Brexit time, are people still getting licensed in here, or where are we at right now?
Yeah, I believe that there was, in 2018, when Neophytou came about, there was a very big concern in the industry that, Cyprus as a hub, as we knew it back then, will stop, and licensing demands will stop, and so on, and people would, lose the interest to come here. In contrast, the last 3 years helped by the COVID and the move to online financial services. I think that Cyprus actually kind of exploded in terms of requests. We had a lot of Brexit play that came about. We had a lot of firms that look at Cyprus as a global operations hub for their footprint. They have people that run the operations, the KYC, the onboarding, the banking, the PSPs from here, and they have regulation and skeleton crew in many other jurisdictions running the licenses. So it feels that Cyprus is a hub for the people, the HR, the talent, the payments, getting to know each other, pretty much like London. So I feel that London and Cyprus have been at the forefront of this industry.
So overall, you're still seeing a lot of demand for a Cyprus license compared to what it was a couple of years ago.
Yes, but not for the same reasons. It's more for the global marketing footprint, the show for the banking, the PSP, and not so much to have a Cyprus license in order to market to Europeans.
Got it. Okay. And Angelos, I saw you nodding there. Is this something you agree with as well?
Can you repeat the question?
Do you agree with as well in terms of like the demand still there for licenses in Cyprus?
I totally agree with Demetris. The only thing I would add is, yes, we see increase of licensing applications or clients interested at getting licensed by SAISEC. I was reading also the press release from SAISEC that we have about 5% increase on the licensed regulated investment firms in Cyprus in 2021 than in 2019. So that's some increase. Nearly 800 companies are licensed in Cyprus. What we see, of course, in the past few months and much more demand now is the cryptocurrency related licensing or registration, which is now happening, that we see a lot of inquiries coming from all over the world about having a crypto
and what type of
license.
Right. What type of license is that, and how hard is that to get here?
Look, it's not hard. It requires a team of experienced people. It requires experienced directors. It requires clean shareholders, proper operations. You need to prepare all the documentation that is necessary for SAISEC to review and accept the application, which includes operations manuals, all the manuals about AML, about the way the company will operate. And it's a 10 months approximately process.
Okay. Yes. On a similar subject, in terms of, you mentioned that there's been a lot of growth that's been taking place in terms of a license that exists in Cyprus. But when we read finance magnates, there's a lot of mention about different firms that are losing their license or closing down. So, Xenia, maybe if you can give me a little just understanding, like the companies that are leaving, are they having problems being in Cyprus, or they're going out of business? So what's the main reason that firms are actually closing down here?
Sure, I will answer that. I just wanted to add about the demand for licensing generally. And I would like to add that there is a general demand for being licensed. We've seen that brokers that are licensed are having a lot of challenges, as Demetris said, with banking, or even we've seen from our clients, they have issues with meta codes procuring the MT4. So there is a pressure for being licensed. And SciSec is one of the most recognized, let's say, licenses, along with the FCA. But now with the FCA and Brexit, we've seen, yes, a lot of demand for licenses. And regarding the procedures, I would say, because it's an experienced regulator now, SciSec, we've seen that getting a license with SciSec, because they know, they're experienced now, it's much, I would say it's quicker compared to other jurisdictions as well, and it's a very recognized license. So that's why I would add to this question. Regarding the fines, and your question was?
About firms that are actually closing down, because we do read a lot about firms closing down and leaving and getting rid of their license. So is that because they've just gone out of business, or is it that that there's something else taking place that's causing some firms to find it more difficult to operate over here?
Okay. It's a very interesting question, I would say, and I would like to address, first of all, the overall perspective of getting a license. So getting a license it's a demanding thing. So people that get the license, they need to know where they are going. They have to know the regulation. They have to know that they have to have payroll. They have to have costs. They have to have knowledgeable people. So before applying, they have to know the whole business model and what it takes, and that there are operational costs and everything. And when they apply, they have to do it with someone that has already done the process and knows how to guide them. So because once you submit to the regulator, the game is over. You have to be compliant. So you have to know what you are doing. And once you get your license, I'm getting to your question, you have to be compliant. So we've seen brokers and we've seen SciSec issuing warnings or giving fines or taking licenses. It's because, brokers were not compliant, let's say. Or to answer again your question, why some brokers leave or we see all these sales, is because people didn't do their homework, let's say, why I want a license, and they ended up having a license and then selling it. And we've seen a lot of those the last years.
So overall, it's not just a difficulty of getting the license, but you have to be able to also have the staff and the expertise to keep
it's demanding. And once you have it, you need to be compliant and be watchful of the license.
Okay. Tom, I want to move to the next question here. So one thing that's come up and caused demand, both here in the UK, has been Brexit. But we've I've noticed in terms of speaking with the different brokers that there is a lot of confusion on how do you what do you need right now if I'm in Cyprus or Malta or another European country and I want to operate in the UK or vice versa. And I know there's been the TTP, the temporary transition powers. So Remonda, maybe if you can give us a little just feedback on if you want to operate in both the UK and EU, what do you need to be, what type of compliance do you have to do that?
Yeah, I think just before commenting on that question, I just want to go one step back.
One step backwards, two steps forward.
No, you'll see in a second where it's heading. I think one important question is, yes, absolutely, SciSec is definitely in the forefront in terms of getting a European license, hence you open up the passporting opportunities. And of course, without shred of doubt, Brexit has had a positive impact in Cyprus. But at the same time, I think we need to ask ourselves the question also in terms of the the question you asked earlier is, are you seeing some actually losing their license? And yes, we heard from our colleagues here that if they don't comply, SAISEC are definitely hitting hard on them. I think, to me, actually, the question is, when you are getting regulated in a jurisdiction, whether it's due to Brexit or due to wanting to actually operate a financial institution, I find it a struggle to understand when you're getting a license, are you getting it because you're operating in your home jurisdiction? And I think one paramount observation to put forward is we're going to start seeing much more. I wouldn't say necessarily you'll be fined for it or you're going to lose your license for it, but we're seeing a lot of clients actually going back to the institution saying, I've lost my money, who do I complain to? Of course, whether it's Cyprus or whether it's the UK or whether it's anywhere, a lot of actually investors, if we are talking about the substance of investor protection, it becomes lost in translation. And I think it's actually really important as the regulators get their foot deeper in the market and start understanding the behavior of the financial institutions that are getting regulated, we are going to see some issues there because you can't just comply locally. If you're onboarding clients from Cyprus or the UK cross-border, you have to actually comply with the jurisdiction where your clients are domiciled. And that is something that is not being taken into account. And definitely, it's actually been observed by many regulators, including SAISEC and for sure the UK. So back to your question, I think the question is, why do you need to actually have, whether we're talking about the transitional period, which the UK, for obvious reasons, made it a little bit easier for Cypriot institution to do business there, hence the Brexit mess we're in, is actually allowing you a longer period until 2022. In terms of
so that means what? That if you're an EU...
It means you can continue operating in the UK, and of course you probably have submitted your application to the UK FCA to confirm to them that you are keen in continuing to do business there, and based on that you are likely to submit a proper application, i.e. get fully regulated under the FCA umbrella, which of course some may have an interest. If they are actually genuinely doing business in the UK, they will have to do it. There's no other option. The other way around, of course, SAISEC has been, let's say, generous enough, or Cyprus, to allow a longer period than most of the other regulators in Europe by actually extending it to the end of this year, which of course is positive because it gives UK financial institutions time until year end to decide whether they would like to operate with a license here, and therefore you need to probably have started, to be frank, your application not now, but some months ago, if you want to have it in good time for January comes. So of course it's again,
okay.
You know, are you doing business here? So do you need it?
Okay, just kind of moving things on to a different part of regulation, which AML and KYC. So Evdokia, I wanted to get, because I know you do a lot of this kind of preparation for firms for how they should be looking during their AML and their KYC. What trends are you seeing right now that are taking place that firms should be knowing about, that they need to fix this or know that this is taking place in order that they don't get fined or have problems in the future?
First of all, I will say that at the local level, we have seen SAISEC introducing the SAISEC AML certification. This was introduced in December 2019, and so it's almost 2 years since the inception of the certification, and we have seen a great demand, a lot of demand from all participants within the industry, either them being executive directors, AML officers, and even aspiring employees, that they want to see the examinations, and we have seen all the seats, the examination slots being fully booked as soon as they are announced by the regulator. And actually, this is great. However, at the same time, I would say, this meets the objective of SAISEC, which at the first place, the objective of SAISEC was to equip all the individuals with the appropriate knowledge regarding the AML regulatory framework. And by them learning the regulation for the exam, they equip themselves for the regulatory framework, the risk involved within the industry they work, because we know each investment firm operates on a different model, so they have the relevant risks. Duties and responsibility of the relevant people are now known. Therefore, we don't have people just placeholders. We have people that they are talented now, they are equipped, so they can go and do proper KYC, proper maybe even better ways of onboarding clients. And this is substantial for complying in this field. Now, at the global level, we have seen a lot of moves around AML, KYC, and we are seeing, we'll say that there's a third wave of RegTech due to the automation that we see around KYC, making this procedure even faster and better.
Are regulators asking firms if they're using different automated ways of doing this electronically instead of manually?
There is no certain regulation saying that you have to go through the automation as long as you do your KYC. But all of the firms that are getting as startups, slowly they become on the automation. They need it, it's necessary for them because otherwise they cannot grow. And what automation can actually offer you is the capabilities they have within the automations. And you can also use the new technology, and now we can see the blockchain being within the part of the third way of the technology. Mm-hmm. And saying that, I will say that this is one of the reasons that the regulators might feel now more confident moving towards the regulation part of the crypto assets and being part of their regulatory framework. Of course, if you don't have now automations, it would be very hard to do KYC, KYT, and even the wallet. It would be very difficult to do all of that. So I think it's a step forwards for being compliant and also step forwards for carrying all of those risks that will come more with the crypto assets.
Mm-hmm. Remonda, knowing that this is an area of RegTech that you're involved in, are you seeing like questions like in terms of your clients that are brokers, when they talk to the regulators, is there feedback about them, about the technology they're using and what type of checks it does?
Yeah, there's no doubt. And of course, they need to demonstrate that they are doing it. And how are you doing it? Of course, there's no doubt whatsoever that you can't onboard clients without using technology tools. I mean, it's virtually impossible. And in fact, ESMA has commented on it many times, and they actually are pushing even harder, and we will see more coming also from ESMA's direction, where they're actually asking now institutions to have a technology budget specifically for that. Of course, it's not stamped in the law, but it's definitely guidelines now where they're pushing national regulators to actually identify whether there's a budget in the legal departments or onboarding departments where it's very clear that they're actually budgeting for these type of solutions as well. We've seen also regulators in offshore jurisdictions where many of you are probably used to notarizations and so forth. And actually, we have been able to even contact some of them to say, surely you don't need this anymore if these technological advancements and tools show full verification. And we have actually managed with many to change their thought around that as well, and hence also changing the regulation on that. So yes, absolutely.
Okay. Just throwing out this question, if anyone has an answer to it. I know about 3 or 4 months ago, it came out, there was questions about Malta, about them being on a gray list in terms of for AML. Has CISA gone to different or put any circulars or spoken to firms about where they're, you have to keep your banking in the EU, but if they had any warnings about specific countries that they're hesitant that firms are involved with?
I believe that it doesn't have to do with the FX industry. I believe it has to do with banking. And Cyprus has undergone a humongous change from 2013 onwards in terms of what the banks were accepting and what they're accepting now. There was a huge de-risking of the banking book and what kind of international clients the banks here would accept. I happen to speak with a lot of compliance departments with banks. And the feedback that I get is that they are fighting tooth and nail to make sure that the correspondent banks keep Cyprus on the white list, keep the lines open, which will then also mean that they won't go ever in some kind of grey list. So I believe that it wouldn't be FX related, or this industry, at least the online brokerage that would affect it. It would be international payments, banking, perhaps unregulated gambling in some countries.
Okay. We've touched on, but not really like fully discussed about cryptocurrencies. And I know before Chairwoman Demetris Collegero, before she had left about a month ago, she had a long interview that she had done, and a lot of it was focused on the future of Cyprus and regulating of cryptocurrencies. So maybe Angelos, if you could just give a little background about what's changing. You talked a little bit about the crypto licenses, but is there going to be for an FX broker that has CFDs on cryptos? Are there going to be changes that are taking place, and also are there different opportunities that they'll be able to take advantage of now with these new crypto licenses?
Look, it's not about licensing, it's registration. So SAISEC is giving now through the 5th AML law, which is has been implemented and applied recently in Cyprus, has given the requirement for crypto asset service providers who operate in or through Cyprus to get registered with SAISEC. This registry will also be available on the SAISEC website at some point for sure. What does this mean? This means that the crypto asset service providers will be subject to approval for registration. It's not licensing as such. It's not going to be regulated. It's registered, and but they will be subject to all anti-money laundering requirements. This, of course, will create some transparency, significant transparency, and will be very much to the interests of traders, of crypto asset traders. Now, whether this will be taken as an advantage for investment firms, well, in a way, a crypto asset service provider is not an investment firm. An investment firm has to apply and be regulated as an investment firm. The investment firms as such could have extended their license to include CFDs and crypto derivatives, but I wouldn't say that the crypto asset service provider goes as an extension of the investment firm services.
Okay, so overall, you don't expect what's coming out to really happen. Like the CFD providers, it wouldn't really have an effect of what SAISEC is looking to implement for cryptocurrencies. Evdokia, do you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, basically the difference here is that the regulator chooses to form the CASP directive, the registration of a separate entity at the moment, instead of adding this as a service to the investment services to the CIFs. We know that the regulation about the CIFs is mainly, it's derived through the MiFID II, and the regulator chooses to differentiate that. I can understand the risks that are involved with the crypto assets, and they don't want to mix the risks and these entities within the current structure that is already working. I will say that this can be a wise option, why they do that. However, it creates a lot of practicalities and difficulties with investment firms that if they want to be in this sector, they have to have a new board, they have to go through the application procedure, new IOMs, business plans, etc. On the one side, it's good that we are forming as a separate. On the other side, it's difficult. While saying that, while this is evolving, we may expect the regulator, and while we learn, and also the automations that will be in place and everything, we may see the regulator being more confident about that and include the service, allow the service to be added within the investment services. But at the moment, I see it as a good move for them to form it well and going through this steps slowly. We all learn from it and we establish a good system. AML is the basis of regulating actually the cash providers. So if we do it smoothly in a good way, we will see Cyprus increasing being financial hub on the crypto asset within Europe.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Xenia, I want to ask you, in terms of other trends from CySec, we've covered AML and cryptocurrencies. Are there other areas that you feel that people should know about that CySec has been focusing on?
Yeah, sure. With the introduction of MiFID II, the last couple of years, there has been a tremendous increase in the regulations for investment firms. And the regulators have stated that investment firms or regulated firms may have not applied so much the regulation per se. So they are giving emphasis to, and they issued guidelines to apply specifically the MiFID II requirements in more detail. They did thematic reviews on different aspects of MiFID CySec. They also did on-site inspections. Now they categorize the firms into the higher risk firms, and they started doing audits specifically for certain sectors of the MiFID II. For example, best execution, or now the suitability assessment and onboarding, they're going to do specific checks for that. So yes, that's, they are expecting the regulated firms to comply with all these changes in MiFID, because it has brought a lot of new regulations, and the market needs to, be able to, they should have complied, but they, and now it's the time that CySec is checking that these are implemented, and I believe they're going to do a lot more checks on these areas.
Demetris, earlier you had mentioned about, after MiFID II that Xenia was also talking about, there's also been other changes with changes in leverage, and that there could be like an exit of people going offshore. With the current leverage and what's happening, do you feel that firms are happy about it, that they're dealing with it? I mean, do they feel that it's more compliant and easier for them to handle, and it's actually doing what it's supposed to be doing?
Well, that's an interesting question, and following with your previous comment about why firms have exited, of course, some firms had regulatory issues, some firms had, given up the license for Europe. I think you've seen the announcements. Big firms, big names have announced, we don't take any more European clients. Let's not say names, but it shows that certain companies had a different business model. They had the business model of acquiring clients within 3 to 6 months, high leverage, new client, acquire new client, call center model, and all of that. It has been apparent that the regulators do not like this model. They have shunned upon it. They have created a lot of regulation around this call center model, old school model, if I can call it that. And now the world is moving towards like one app, an electronic experience, one user experience. We've seen the success of Robinhood. I think that, if I could hold a crystal ball, in like 5 years, you'll have an app, and within that app, you'll be able to do your payments, your crypto deposits, your online brokerage, your insurance, your banking APIs. You'll have all your economic life within a pie chart and basically know everything you hold and everything that moves. And I think that's where the regulation is going to, like electronic KYC, crypto deposit in and out, anything online brokerage in and out, all your funds, your pension, your insurance, everything in one-stop shop. And I think that's where the regulation should go to, because that's the real need of the user.
Okay, but going back, so overall, you're saying that because of the increase in regulation and different things of leverage, that did trigger some firms to exit, but overall your feeling is that it hasn't had this massive, it hasn't had a financial impact, on the current.
Well, the numbers industry. Talk, it had a serious impact in 2018 and 2019. If you see the numbers.
But as of now, things have.
Yeah. Well, you have the external shock, which was COVID, and the window dress. I mean, some companies had the highest numbers since many years.
Sure.
But I'm not sure if they're sustainable. I think that firms that worked the leverage way and the call center way, they don't have a future in Europe. Firms that work with online KYC, online asset management, online algorithmic trading, online brokerage, low leverage, no pressure on clients, those guys have a future in Europe. Plus, remember that a lot of unregulated guys exited during the last 3-4 years because of the pressure from the banks and the PSPs, which meant that more business is coming to the remaining big players that are left.
So based on that, so I guess the last question over here is last week or two, so we have a changing of the guard where we now have a new SAISEC chairperson, Dr. George Demetris, and I know he had spoken today. So maybe just quick to hear from each one of you, knowing what he said today and just your general feedback. Do you think SAISEC, with his leadership, or just in general, is geared to be able to handle this future digital compliance that's needed in the future? So Angelos, we'll start with you.
Yeah. So look, it's a it's a tricky question. The technology is faster than regulation, and we see the international trend going towards blockchain, going towards virtual assets, and we see SAISEC being one step closer to regulating that or being in control in a way of that. It is a very tricky question because to license something or to allow registration of some blockchain technology business, it's one thing, and supervising that, it's another thing. I do believe that there are very experienced and very well-educated Cypriots and European citizens who are able to, able to supervise and follow this trend. So the reason I'm saying again, it's a tricky question is if we will, we and I say SAISEC, and with assistance of us all, especially the ones that were in Cyprus, if we will be able to be, there at the right time when the supervision will be required. And at the very end, it's all about securing the traders. So again, yes, I believe it's the current situation of SAISEC, it's mandatory that they do develop further and they do have the technical ability and the knowledge to regulate what we are about to see in the next few years.
Okay, Xenia, do you have anything to add on that?
Yeah. Okay, as a general comment, I think the new board, which we welcome, and we believe that, I believe that they are very strong candidates as well. Mr. Theocharidis has been also in the blockchain technologies and etc. So we'll give this new air in the SAISEC. Also, the new vice president has been in the industry working in and knows exactly the problems in the fund administration, has been active in the committees and etc. And so he will have the know-how to another area, which is a very growing sector, the fund sector in Cyprus. So they will definitely have these new contributions, let's say. But overall, SAISEC, I believe, has done a very good job the last few years. And it has built on the AML regime, all the legislation. So I believe continuing the previous role of the previous board, they are definitely competent, and I expect to see a very, good
Okay.
and better results for the future.
So just because we're short on time and I want to allow for questions, so Remonda, Demetris, and Evdokia, do you have any counter thoughts? Do you think that there's maybe things that are need to actually improve before? So yeah.
Yeah, I think this morning I took two things out of the meeting by the new chairman. One, of course, investor protection, and two, the crypto registration and how exciting it is to advance that. I think, as you quite rightly pointed out earlier, there is a lot. We keep talking about MiFID II. We all know MiFID II is extremely old now, and we're likely to probably see MiFID III. And I think we actually need to just make sure we do that well. And SciSec, to give huge credit to them, having followed them myself for many, many years, in fact, for a decade, good decade, is there's been enormous positive change. And the positive change is actually really making sure that Cyprus is at the forefront and is seen as one of the best places to get regulated, as well as the obvious other examples we all know. So I think I would say definitely they should focus a lot on making sure the investor protection avenue is taken care of. We've seen many policies coming out on suitability, appropriateness, categorization, the list goes on. Let's get that right, and then let's take the next challenge to all the other topics we discussed, and then we'll be ready for them, at least from the regulator side.
Thank you. So I want to open up now the floor to any questions from the audience.
Hi there, yes. Just going back to the offshore jurisdictions that we touched upon before, do you have an opinion on SciSec's view regarding CIFs and Cypriot regulated firms operating on multiple jurisdictions? And do you foresee any changes on SciSec's perspective towards CIFs who are operating on multiple jurisdictions?
When you say multiple jurisdictions, you mean offshore?
Or offshore jurisdictions, it could be Seychelles or Caymans or St. Vincent or Grenadines.
Good question.
So thank you for your question. I believe that it's important to understand that people that use Seychelles, Mauritius, all these offshore brokers and take European clients, this has an expiration date. I don't know if your question was directed towards that route, but the fact that you can hold higher leverage in these jurisdictions versus coming into Europe, and this loophole of reverse solicitation, I believe for sure has an expiration date. It shouldn't be the business plan, and I believe that...
Just to clarify, it's for non-EU, regarding non-EU clients.
Yeah. Oh, for non-EU. Well, non-EU, you need legal opinion. So most companies now have an offshore broker in order to cover the rest of the world and a European broker to cover Europe. And what it ends up being is some people, unfortunately, are sending Europeans to offshore brokers for high leverage, and they claim reverse solicitation. I believe that has an expiration date. And I also believe for the offshore brokers that a lot of the countries are going to catch up in the regulation, and they will copy and emulate the European and US rules. We've seen Australia, we've seen Japan, we've seen Singapore. They're going to also limit leverage. So people need to adjust their business model to lower leverage and a more refined user experience, a more full user experience, more long-term user experience, rather than burn the client 3 months, burn the client 3 months. That model should be in the past.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions?
I think you mentioned that in Cyprus, for crypto traders, they need to be registered only and not licensed. Can you elaborate that, please? Thank you.
Yeah, it's not licensed, it's a registry. It's not considered to be regulated, it's considered to be registered, so that a trader who is about to log on to the website of this crypto asset service provider has the ability to ensure that this provider is transparent, is subject to the relevant anti-money laundering laws, and in a way it's following some framework. But beyond that, so far the information we have is that it's not regulated, it's not licensed, it's registered.
Thank you. One last question?
Just to add to maybe more clarity here. It's not, yes, licensed, but at the same time, it is licensed in a way that they had to follow all the AML legislations, all the AML framework, and this is kind of investor protection. The difference with the SIF is that the investor protection, when you are a literary client, you can go to the ombudsman, you can claim back, you can do claims through the ICF, whereas the registration of the cash provider does not opt to the protection of these two investors. However, instead of being on the regulated space overall, you have a certain amount of kind of regulation under the SISEC. It is not unregulated overall. However, we expect to see the regulator being formed policies and procedures for the cash providers, especially for the AML. So there is a regulation there. It is not, it's not the same as they are regulated entities. It's just we don't call it authorized firms, it's registered firms.
Yeah, thank you. The last question?
Yeah, hello, my name is Peter, I'm from Finberg Technology, and I have two questions, if you don't mind. So first question is about CASP registration. From what I see in terms of the documents and policies you need to have in place, it is the same set of documents and policies you need for SIF. So if you're a CASP, you're, okay, registered, you're not licensed, but the framework is exactly the same. My question is, am I wrong, or there are some differences between SIF and CASP at the moment?
It's what I said earlier. You have to follow all the procedures and policies. So in a way, you are licensed. You are not authorized as such. You are not carrying the authorization, but you will have a registration number. And you will be under SISEC or scrutiny, let's say. It will be supervised by SISEC. So you have to have mandatory all the KYC procedures and everything. The only difference is about a more lenient way of, you cannot have the investor protection as such as the SIFs.
So basically, if I'm dealing only with cryptos and I'm registered, I'm fine. If I want to add, for example, CFDs to my portfolio of products, I just, say, make an announcement and notify SISEC, amend my documents just a little bit, just add CFD.
But it'll be treated as a new application.
Well, actually, CFDs falls under MiFID II.
Exactly.
So I think the fundamental difference here is that MiFID II brings with it a host of regulation, meaning market abuse regulation, investor protection regulation, and so on, whilst the CASP registration regime basically is very fresh and new, and unfortunately it doesn't bring with it all this wealth of investor protection that the MiFID II brings with 20 years now in the making, because MiFID I took 10 years to be prepared. MiFID II came 10 years after MiFID I, and I'm sure there's a lot of work that has gone into protecting these guys. One example is, let's say you pick a crypto asset. How do you know that people don't do pump and dump or the usual, market abuse stuff that you would do in a stock? You're smiling, and I know why you're smiling, but if you see how much market abuse is happening in crypto assets these days, I'm pretty sure one day the regulator will wake up and say, hold on, what are these guys doing? They're doing exactly the same thing that they were doing in stock markets 30 years ago.
But it's coming. We know that.
I hope so, because it's illogical for people to be able to pump and dump crypto, whilst 30 years ago you had regulation preventing, market abuse.
No, but it's coming at a European level. We're seeing it with MiCA now, of course, and that's what actually the registration is preparing for. Because it's exactly as you point out. Logically, you would think registration versus licensing should be under two different easier framework, but the reality is you still have to comply, which is, as quite rightly pointed out. But of course, the next stage now is getting it under the regulation.
I apologize if you had one more question, but we're just out of time, so we need to wrap up things. But you're more than welcome to speak with any of the five speakers afterwards.
Questions personally. Thank you.
Great. So I want to thank all of our panelists for being here, for everybody for attending, especially the last seminar is always the hardest one to get through. Just to give you some quick tidbits. So Xenia mentioned very importantly, one of the advantages of having the regulation here is that is the importance of making it easier for when dealing with liquidity providers and banking. Remonda mentioned about the importance how a lot of regulation now is being investor-driven. So firms are doing what their investors want. They want to see the different types of regulations. Demetris stressed that the importance that Cyprus itself still has this global hub of intelligence and employees here. That's just as important, if not more important, than the actual piece of paper of a license you get. And Angelos, he went through in terms of the cryptocurrency regulation and how important it is to the traders themselves, and gives them the extra transparency and backing when you get that registration, even though if it's very similar to the SIF. And last, Evdokia just mentioned that something that Cyprus is doing a little bit different about is that they are making sure that all employees are really getting the education and pushing compliance from that end, and not just throwing a lot of laws on everybody. So thank you all again for attending, and a wonderful day and evening.